Now, Egypt's amended constitution will be ready in 4 months. So that is according to the foreign minister. But the reforms are not progressing as fast or as far as protesters would have liked. Tens of thousands of Egyptians are striking. The Obama administration is also saying leaders aren't doing enough to satisfy the protesters. It's warning of unrelenting demonstrations until the reforms are real. Well, so with the country still in a state of flux and uncertainty, how long before it is back to business as usual? Well, Angus Blair is head of research at Beltone Financial. He's been based in Cairo for 5 years, but the unrest has left him stranded in Britain since he returned here on business. He joins me now. Thank you very much for joining us. I mentioned their business as usual. Do we know if it will ever return? What business as usual will be in the future?
Yeah, well, first of all, there will be a new normal no matter what happens. We just have to determine what that will be, and at the moment everything is fluid, as you mentioned. Tomorrow there are plans for further demonstrations. There seems to be some sticking between the two sides. There's no real common agreement right now. The word is that the Council of Wise Men, including some business leaders and academics, some legal professors who have been discussing issues with the Vice President, have not seemed to have made much progress. There are vested interests that want to keep things very much as they are. Both sides seem to be entrenched. The issue is, I hope obviously that it remains calm and that reasoned voices come out. The issue that's important is progress will depend on the protesters coalescing around a certain agenda. At the moment they haven't got one.
So what about the executive from Google who was making quite impassioned speeches in Tahrir Square? Yes. Yeah. I mean, is that a potential leader, or is it just too early to say?
I don't think he wants to be a leader. His tweet, which I read this morning, one of them from last night, was saying that after all of this is over, he does not want to become involved in politics. He's going back to his job.
Okay. What I suppose it's very difficult to work out at the moment is whether a majority of people would accept a sort of Mubarak light, if you like, the president leaving, by September, a kind of an orderly transition of power, but possibly still with some of those old guard in place.
Yeah, that would be a good solution in a way to make things happen, make sure there's some progression. The issue, though, Andrea, is that there are a lot of people now who are very unhappy. And the violence that was used against the protesters about 2 weeks ago changed everything. And the interview with Welgonum, you mentioned, the executive from Google, also changed everything on television. He galvanized an enormous demonstration on Tuesday. And I'm not quite sure the leaders realize what people feel. They're increasing strikes now across Egypt. So whatever happens, I have to say, I do think something has to happen quickly to remove the impasse peacefully and try to find a dialogue between the two sides. And
what role can the army play in this? I know we've talked about this when you came in before, and there has actually been commentators who know an awful lot about this have been talking about the kind of an idea that there almost has been a soft coup, that there is more power now with the army. At some point, will it be the army's decision? Yeah,
I think actually in the end it is. You're right. The army had a coup in 1952, and at that time there was a form of democracy in Egypt. Over time, Egypt began to change economically. And there was a crisis from 1999 to 2004. The army has always been in the background. Every president has been in the military. So in a way, they're always the army is always involved in the decision making. And why I mentioned the crisis is the fact that it was done on their watch too, and that the president had to bring in people from outside, technocrats, to make the change. And he sacked that cabinet a few weeks ago. And a lot of investors and local people had confidence in what they were doing. Not everyone, because there hadn't been a trickle-down effect. But the issue is the army are the main deciders in what will happen, and their role has to be thought through properly, because there is at the moment there's one side with one position and another side with another position, and no real dialogue. Now, in terms of business, actually, we've seen a relative support for the businesses. There hasn't been a sort of a collapse as we could have imagined that there would be. The banks seem, the ones that have opened, there isn't a giant run on the banks. There is more stability, perhaps, than observers might have expected. Yeah, we were surprised with this, Andrea. We were quite right. Each day this week, there's been an incremental increase in the number of ATMs opening, the number of banks opening. We thought there'd be a run on the banks. There wasn't. There was an initial move to people to actually just get hold of some money. But a number of companies have deposited money. 2 banks have said that they've seen an increase in deposits. That's good, and it's surprising. The GDRs in London fell. They improved a little, so the perception is that everything will be all right. I'd say that that doesn't discount the potential for bad news. So I think there's still potential for bad news in Egypt. We must be ready for that. And the economy is going to be hit. Tourism revenues, 5% of GDP, will be hit for some time too.
OK. Well, thank you very much indeed for coming in and sharing your insights with us. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you.